presenters for tonight.
Thanks, Gord. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time introducing much other than I do want to just say we have basically 7 different presenters. So we're going to do it in the order. I'm going to show a short video from Melissa Lem, who isn't able to join us tonight, but she's from the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment. So she did a really lovely video talking about something that she has started locally, which is very much like forest bathing that you would see in Japan. So it's sort of a new approach to health. So she's going to talk about that. Then we have somebody from Mali. So he's very kindly joined us here today, and it's about 3 o'clock in the morning, his time. So he's joining us to tell us a little bit about the work he's doing with the 11 schools that he works with over there. Then Colin Mayer is going to come and talk and give a little bit of perspective around being a science teacher, and he's a department head in one of the schools here in Vancouver. So he's going to talk about that. And then we're going to go to Raluca, who is, she's an RN, but she also has a master's in science and nursing, and she's going to give us a lovely presentation about she's going to cover lots of ground. And then we have 2 people from For Our Kids. And so one is both local in North Van, but also does national work. And we also have somebody from our Vancouver district who is going to have a child coming into the school, and that is Jinhua. She's going to have a child starting kindergarten next year. So, and then George is going to, George Radner from Be the Change Earth Alliance. And I will do a little introduction to everybody, but I just wanted to sort of give you the spectrum of who's going to be here. So he's from Be the Change Earth Alliance, and he's going to show some of the incredible resources that they have put together for teachers, for students. And I'm sure if there was really interested parents, that they could also do that as well. So I'm just going to share just a little bit briefly in terms of, just one moment. So you might have remembered, so these are all of our speakers that are here, but I just wanted to just briefly, in terms of an overview, so last year you might have remembered, this is the 3rd year we've been doing something on sustainability. So we started in 2019, in November of 2019, and we had more on an action side. We did have Colin Mayer also here with one of his students, and we also had City of Vancouver, a counselor from there, and also a trustee. So we had that, and then last year we focused more on the interface between the City of Vancouver and also on the VSB in terms of their planning department in terms of sustainability. So again, I also came a little bit late, so I do also want to acknowledge that I am doing this work on the traditional and unceded territories of the Coast Salish people, but particularly the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. So again, my appreciation for being here and being able to do this on this incredibly beautiful land. And so again, thanks everyone for being here too with us, and for acknowledging all of that. And this was from the very first year. So this was, I wanted to do a little bit about in terms of sustainability. So this was people's impressions on what is sustainability. So tonight's focus,
I'm never going to say no to you, man.
Sorry. Mike, your mic is not mic'd. I think, or is it Mike, or is it, who is it? I'm not sure. Anyhow, so we did kind of this word cloud. And so I do want everyone to sort of think about what is climate sensitive, education. What does it mean? What do you think it means? Because that's sort of the topic for tonight, and that's what sort of all of this is sort of coalescing around. So just to sort of think about that word, climate sensitive education, and hopefully everyone will learn a little bit more about what that is going to mean in terms of health and environment and our responsibility. But you can see all of these things are still kind of central in what we're talking about tonight. And so just as a little quick recap of some of the things that happened, this was where we were in 2019, right? Over 100,000 people, if you can look over here, you know, made their way down from City Hall all the way down to, you know, downtown. And it was a much different picture. And the kids, you know, all the sustainability and everything, all the energy that was happening was really amazing. And now with COVID, things have really changed. And we're really trying to start picking this up again. And as we start this presentation, I just want everyone to think, you know, we are acting locally, obviously, but, and I'm really happy that, that Togonon Sivaran Togo from Mali is here, because while we are, it'll help us think a little bit more globally while we are acting and thinking about all the stuff that he's working on as well. So with that, I would just like to, I'm going to now just move over to, I think I'm going to try and transfer over to a different screen here. So just one moment. It's always hard to find, again, when you're doing these things. This is not what I'm trying to find. Okay, hold on. All right, so it's this. This is the one I'm trying to show you. Okay, 1 second. Thanks for your patience, everybody. Okay, so this is, we're just going to start off with Dr. Melissa Lem from Cape, just to sort of give us a little bit of an overview. It's only a 3.5 minute video, but a really wonderful video that she put together because she couldn't quite make it tonight. She's busy with something else. So I hope you enjoy this.
Hey.
Oops.
Hey, I'm Dr. Melissa Lem. I'm a Vancouver family doctor and founder and director of PARX, Canada's National Nature Prescription Program, powered by the BC Parks Foundation. And I'm also president-elect of the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment. Today, I'm going to talk to you about why it is so important for kids to spend time playing outside in the great outdoors. But first, I'll tell you a little bit about our program. PARX launched in BC in November 2020, and since then, we've launched in 8 other provinces across the country, from here to Nova Scotia. We have over 5,000 licensed healthcare professionals registered to prescribe nature in Canada. And the reason why we do it is not only because there's a huge amount of research supporting the idea that spending time outside in nature is one of the best things that we can do for our health, but also having a trusted health professional writing it down increases patients' motivation to follow their advice. So let me talk about some of the science behind why nature is so good for kids' brains. Most of us have probably noticed that kids, okay, who am I kidding? All of us get a bit antsy when we spend time indoors or in busy urban environments. And scientists think there's a reason for that. When you're surrounded by screens and crowds, random noises and flashing lights, this overloads your brain and tires out your powers of conscious attention, which makes you more tired, distractible, and irritable. But spending time in nature is a source of what's called soft fascination. It's interesting, but it doesn't constantly force you to direct your attention to deal with all those competing stimuli. So that restores your powers of conscious attention, improves your energy, and calms you down. And when your brain is happier and less stressed, this plays out in so many different ways that improve kids' health. Kids who spend more time in nature as they grow up literally have bigger brains. Their brain volume is increased in areas that improve their memory and attention. Research also shows that every extra day per week a child spends in a park steadily increases their resilience against stress. And kids who play in greener school grounds also tend to play more cooperatively, communicate better, and decrease their aggressive behavior. So it's probably not a surprise that spending time in nature is also great for kids' physical health. Kids who get their hands dirty playing in soil and vegetation have lower rates of allergies. Kids who spend time in nature also tend to be more physically active and have healthier body weights. Research also shows that breathing in the smell of nature, which contains phytoncides or organic compounds released by plants and trees, can also boost your immune system. And finally, one of the most important reasons to make sure kids spend lots of time outdoors is because it builds their love for the planet. Studies show that kids who spend more time outside are more likely to become environmentalists when they're adults. And these pro-environmental behaviors of people who are more connected to nature go beyond just conservation, because it makes sense that we protect what we love, but they also tend to recycle more, conserve more energy, and advocate for climate action. So from your brain to your toes to the planet, spending time in nature is essential for a kid's health. If you want to learn more, check out our website, www.parkprescriptions.ca, and let's make sure we all make outdoor time a priority in our own lives and in our kids' lives. Thanks.
So without much gap, I just want to again thank her for doing that. I thought she did an amazing job. So I'd like to move to Togonon Severon Togo, and just want to do a little brief introduction to him right now. And let me just find him in our gallery here. Okay, so just going to spotlight your video, Togonon, right now. Togonon Severon Togo, he's an environmental educator, he's a humanitarian, he's also the founder of Environmental Education for Youth Empowerment, or how he calls it, EI. Besides his dedication for improving awareness in his region in Mali about pollution, about the climate crisis, he's also taking additional training in web and application development to further help his community. So his main goal is to bring and increase environmental awareness and his commitment and vision to get the environmental education into his national curriculum. So it's currently about 3 a.m., like I said, in the morning in Mali. So please join me in welcoming and thanking Togonon Severon Togo for being here and to his commitment to make a difference on the planet.
Thank you so much. So very happy to be among you. That's very happy. Now I'm going to explain and what we do here in Mali. So it's really a pleasure to be among you. I'm going to share a slide here. Okay. Hello everyone. As Sky said, I'm Togonon Severon Togo from Mali. I'm an environmental activist, a humanitarian. Yeah. So I'm more focused on environmental education. Yeah. And so I created environmental education and youth empowerment to bring solution in my country, because I know that few years ago, so people are trying to live in the best way, but that didn't happen. Why? Because the climate change is causing many problems in the community, in the country. So the idea that helped me to find this, to create this association is that many people in my country are not aware about climate science, So that's why I think that helping them understand this issue, it can bring solution in the long term. So that's why I try to create environmental education and youth empowerment, also called EI, So first of all, environmental education and youth empowerment is an association that has been created in 2020, April 2020, to bring awareness so that people, students in our country, can have a little understanding of their interaction with the environment. Because that's very important in kinds of education, in kinds of development in my country. And so our role is to bring knowledge, to give knowledge to our students and young people to know really how they interact with the environment and bring solution to the environmental issue in their country through their creativity. So also sensitize them how they can respect their environment. That's something that we can do in order to bring this awareness to help our environment to be safe, to be secure, so that we can live as many years. This is something that we can do every day, daily in our daily life. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So as I said, so we also try to create or to promote the relationship between humans and our nature, you know. So helping them understand and building ambassadors so that they can share this message to the community, because helping people, mainly young people, to understand really how they interact with the environment is something something that everyone can know in order to share this important message. That's why we focus more on education, because we think that education is something that helps us to bring a long-term solution to a problem. So that's why we created this association, and we think that our work can help many young people in our country, or even in our sub-region. So I think that doing this kind of work is very meaningful for us and for people who are trying to understand what we are doing. Yeah. So talking is, we also talk about conservation, how we can conserve our natural resources. Because trying to exploit natural resources, it is not very good for our environment. So we sensitize them how we can protect these resources, because our lives depend on those resources. We cannot exploit those resources in order to get money or financial resources. That's something that we let people understand, that we can try to preserve these resources, because it is our duty to protect, to safeguard our nature. So helping people in our community to do this is, as I said, something we can always trying to do in order to be in harmony with our nature. We do this by sensitizing people, educating students to be ambassadors, to share those messages to their community. So here, for example, this picture, we help students to visit the green place where we can find different kinds of trees. So this is why we do this, because for us, it's a way to bring students, young people, closer to the environment. So whenever they know the importance of environment, they can realize how important is environment, how important is protecting environment in their lives. So we realize that after doing those activities, so they are very happy to learn more about their own environment, about their own nature. So we think that doing those things is very important for not for the life, but for their life, the lives of the surroundings. And we also create the positive attitude towards this environment in the students, because whenever, as I said, whenever they know the importance of protecting the environment, because they are more, I can say, more involved in this issue, in solving this issue. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Here also we try to develop the skills. How we trying to develop these skills? We try to build materials like curriculum, environmental education curriculum, so to help students to learn more about their environment, because we trying to make resources to know the current situation of our environment so that we can know how we can find solution. After creating curriculum, we try to train students and also their teachers, because if we want to keep our program working, we need to train teachers in different schools, because we, as I said, we work with 11 schools. So we cannot go every day to those 11 schools. What we are doing, we train students, teachers there, so that they can train their children, their students. So this is the way we can keep working our program. So it's also help us to gain more time, because whenever we don't have time, the teachers can do the same. It's like to empower teachers to have more skills on environment. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And we try to develop these skills, try to create activities like how we can try to recycle plastic, how we can try to collect plastic, so that we can really understand the importance of trying to protect our environment. And we also work with authorities in our country, so that they can we can work together in order to bring this solution. Yeah. Because we understand that environment is components, it's the components that we can also try to care about. Then here we also talk about the consequences, because whenever we do something that's wrong, this can cause a problem to our environment. We try to help them understand the behavior we can have towards toward our environment, and we do this by creating, as I said, materials, by bringing solution, by helping them how we can bring solution and what kind of solution is essential in protecting our environment. And our vision is first trying to bring awareness, and second, this is a long-term vision, a big vision, because right now we don't have a specific curriculum, environmental education curriculum in our country. So we, in the future, we hope to include environmental education curriculum to our national education system. You know, this is what we are trying to do, and we hope to do this through projects. And we are very happy to partner with people who understand our vision. Sorry. Okay, here are some activities we are trying to do. So every year in the rain season, we try to plant trees. This is like to bring awareness, because whenever you want people to follow you, you have to show them the different way we can participate in this in realizing our vision. So we first try to plant trees every year. Even whenever people see us planting trees, they can follow us. And we are very happy that many people who see us doing this, they try to do the same, you know. That's something, it's like not educating, but trying to bring people closer to our vision by just doing activities. Speaking is good, but showing them things through activities is very important. And as I said, we are very happy people that people are joining us. Yeah. And this is about trying to motivate young people about fighting against plastic pollution. We first trying to organize like training session in schools. We are now working with 11 schools. We train them, and during this training, we organize plastic collecting activities so that students by themselves can try to collect plastic that are around the school, and then they try to they try to gather it, and so that we can call a plastic recycling company so that they can come and pick up this. Because whenever we try to throw those plastics, it's not good for our environment too. So we educate young people not to throw plastic, but to put there in a bin so that people who need it can come and collect it. Yeah, here, as I said, this trainer here, we try to train teachers, and there are teachers, we train them here. Like, yeah, we try to train them. This is some activity we are doing it. And this is like an event that we organize every 3 months, in the school. So we try to organize event in order to sensitize people how to manage waste in their community. Because by doing this, we can help many people to know how to short the plastic in their families, in their communities. Yeah. And this is a little bit about what we are doing. And so thank you so much. Inche, this is in Bambara, Inche. I thank you for your time to listen to what you are doing. Thank you so much, Inche. Thank you.
Thanks, Togonon. Really appreciate it, you doing that. And I guess you're up or down. I don't know if when people see, but again, thank you for that. And for Togonon speaks 4 different languages. So he also speaks French. So amazing. Thank you again for bringing all that. And I know it touched on a lot of the key points that that people are going to be bringing up today too. So that was fantastic. And I put a couple of the links in there, but if there's anything else you want to add into the chat for parents, I did put your Facebook link, and I think also the donation, the campaign that you have there. So hopefully we'll keep getting you to your goal. So thank you again.
Thank you.
And so next up is Colin. I think you're here, right, Colin? If you can.
I am here, yes.
Perfect. So I am just going to find you in my little thing here. And I'm going to add a spotlight. So hello, Colin. So Colin Mayer, I'm just going to introduce you a little bit, is he's a deeply passionate person around the environment and around nature. And he's always out there hiking and bringing students on great field trips, and also a very great soccer player. That's another hint though, but that's another life. But that's he's a very active person. And so it's great what he's doing with the kids in our schools, because he actually works in one of our high schools locally in Vancouver. And he's also, he did his undergraduate degree, and he also did his PDP at SFU in 2011, and also sustainable education in environmental diversity module, and his master's degree in science at UBC in 2016. So he's done a lot of stuff locally. So I just want to welcome him here, and look forward to hearing a little bit more about his work with the Nature Trust of BC and the other things that he's working at, also with the Teachers Federation. I think he's also part of another program that's to do with the environment. So I'm going to pass this over to you, and I think you have co-host and all the rest of it. So I'm just going to disappear and leave it over to you.
Thank you, Sky. And I'll start with just saying that I'm honored to be here on the traditional territory of the Coast Salish people, unceded land of the Coast Salish people. And Togonon, that was so inspiring to hear that. Tough act to follow. And it's interesting how environmental education is kind of bringing all these perspectives together from around the world. We're kind of all fighting for the same and advocating for the same principles and the same bright future that we hope for our children. So that was really inspiring to hear for me. And I'm sure that more people would love to hear that story. So thank you for that. I don't have a presentation. I've been quite busy with, we got a million things going on. Sky did introduce a couple of the things that I do. So I'm the science department head at McGee Secondary School. And I teach environmental science 12, chemistry, as well as biology. I'm also the current treasurer for the Environmental Educators Provincial Specialist Association. BCTFO has all these specialist associations where teachers can get together and we can really dig deep into areas of focus that we're interested in, and we can target our Pro-D to that, and we can work together so that we're not all fighting for the same resources. And so that's a role that I've enjoyed for the past number of years, and it does give me a little bit of an insight into what's happening in the bigger picture provincially with environmental education. I just figured I'd hit on a few key points of what's going on, at least in Vancouver from my perspective. And I do have a secondary level perspective. I don't know a whole lot about what's going on at the elementary other than just a few things that I'll mention. So just keep that in mind. At the secondary level, climate education is still relatively, it's still focused mostly in sciences, mostly junior science. That's kind of where you'll find that core content. There are teachers who do bring climate into their classrooms outside of sciences. And so I know that there's an English teacher at McGee who is trying to bring a lot more climate related literature into the classroom. And then other programs like our ADST program has an engineering course, and they do a lot of really cool green food projects where they're building. We actually collaborated with them with my science program where we built a kelp farm and grew kelp spores, and we planted them at an undisclosed location because we're not allowed to have them in the water apparently. But that was kind of a cool little thing for the students. I think that at most schools, there's lots of those niche programs going on. But as far as core content, there's lots of references to place throughout the curriculum now. I'm fairly certain most parents are aware of that. But the nitty gritty of climate is mostly focused in the sciences. So there is this slow momentum towards bringing more focus onto climate. And I think a big message lately is moving beyond sustainability, and that it's not enough just to sustain, but why can't we aim to thrive? Why can't we aim for a planet that's actually not just minimally focused on preserving the environment, but where we actually, can live and bloom. And so I think that that's a bit of a shifting narrative, and we'll see where that goes in the next few years. I'd say the biggest barrier right now to getting more climate focus into classrooms is time. Teachers, you'll often hear us grumbling about a lack of time, and it's absolutely true. Like in the semester system right now that we have at the secondary level in Vancouver, we only have one prep block for the whole year, and that would fall into one semester. And so, for example, in the first semester, I had no prep whatsoever. And we kind of have a list of priorities in our head, which is first, let's make sure our students are safe, and let's make sure that they're learning. Let's make sure that we're finding, meaningful assessment for them. But then in terms of being innovative and being creative, that takes a lot of our time. And so in order to be asking teachers to bring in new ideas to the lessons that they have and make sure that they're pedagogically sound and teachers are comfortable with it, it takes a lot of time for us to really wrap our head around that. Furthermore, we're competing with a lot of other new ideas, which are all equally deserving. For example, the new assessment piece, K through 9 now requires the proficiency scales. And that's taken a lot of our energy in order to understand the changes that we need in order to assess fairly and meaningfully. Trying to bring in the first people's principles of learning, that's a really big piece. And we've tailored a lot of our Pro-D energy over the past couple of years to that. And that goes hand in hand with climate education. I don't think that those are exclusive. But typically that's taken a lot of energy for us. And of course, like many, you'll hear from everybody, COVID really slowed things down. We entered sustain mode. We entered how can we keep schools open and how can we keep schools open safely? And that kind of meant a pause on a lot of momentum that we had, looking at maybe trying to bring more climate programs into schools, trying to bring maybe more school gardens in, or finding ways to be more creative. And so I'm not saying that there's not good momentum, it's just slow momentum and it's taking time. And I think that that's probably going to be the case moving forward. Some cool new things that are happening in Vancouver. So as I said, I'm the treasurer for the Environmental Educators Provincial Specialist Association, which is a group, it's a subgroup of the BCTF of a bunch of us that are environmental ed nerds. And we love to talk about place-based learning. We love to talk about how we can, support each other to bring in school gardens and to go on more field trips and get more vitamin N, to use an old term. And so Vancouver actually just started a local chapter of IPSA. We have all these local chapters, every district, or not every district, but a lot of districts will have a local specialist chapter for that. And so Vancouver finally has a chapter within IPSA. It's called Unite. Our president is Kara Loden. And she's done just some amazing work at getting that up and running, because there is, a really dedicated group of us teachers in Vancouver that really do rely on each other, to build our competency and to build our own understanding of what's going on with climate. And so IPSA is a wonderful avenue for that. And our new local chapter means that we have a lot of wonderful focus on what's going on here in Vancouver. And at our last IPSA exec meeting, myself and one of our past presidents, we actually put forward a motion that was passed by our IPSA exec council for a bunch of special grants, where we've essentially set aside $1,000 for each of these local chapters, $1,000 per local chapter to apply for, to support their own Prodi. So that essentially means that the Vancouver IPSA chapter, Unite, essentially could have another $1,000 that we can use for covering teachers. So maybe we can get together for a day or two and have like a really intensive Prodi focus. And I know that doesn't sound like much, but just the idea that we know that we can be paid to do this work and have someone cover our classroom is actually really meaningful to us, and something that we've been asking for a very long time. And it's worth shouting out to VSB. VSB has actually done a wonderful job in the past decade at really supporting environmental ed initiatives. I don't know if she's here tonight, but Ashley Bankson has just been fantastic in her role as the sustainability coordinator, making sure that every year there's $1,000 grants available for teachers and advertising that widely. And I'm fairly certain that gets used up pretty quick. So all in all, we feel relatively supported, but and we know the urgency of this situation. I don't think that teachers would ever argue that we don't need to do this. It's just, is it happening at the pace that we hope it to? Maybe not. And there's all sorts of reasons why, but the big picture is that there is momentum and it's positive, and hopefully things continue to improve. And hopefully we continue to feel supported by the parent group and our administrators in our district, because once we know that we're supported in bringing climate issues into our classroom, then we do a lot more of it, because it is important. Thanks for your time. I really appreciate chatting with you guys today. I think I recognize a few faces from a few years ago. I hope you all stay well. Take care.
Thank you very much, Colin, for doing that. And I don't know whether you're probably not going to stay around too long, right? You have to zip off. But if you stay as long as you can, I guarantee you there's going to be some great stuff. So maybe you can keep one ear open while you're doing whatever else. All right.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks a lot.
All right. So now we're going to move over to, Raluca she's an RN and an MSN, but she also teaches out, so she's teaching out at UBC. So I just wanted to read a little bit about her, and I'm just going to also try to find her so I can get her on screen as well. Hold on. So there you are. Hi. So anyhow, she is an active member of CANE, so it's the Nurses for the Environment, sort of this the sort of sister committee with CAPE, and she's been on that coalition. She said she has been working at the national level, but she's focusing more locally at this time, so she used to sit, I think, on the executive board as their secretary in the national involvement level. So she's decided to spend more time focused on the BC and climate change here. So anyhow, I think she's prepared a wonderful presentation, so I'm not going to take up any time talking about her. She's going to do a great job talking about all the stuff that she's involved in. So anyhow, welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Sky, and good evening. Bonsoir as well. It's really good to be here. Yes, as Sky said, I'm a registered nurse. I got my MSN from UBC that was focused on climate change and health. Specifically, I created an educational toolkit for registered nurses to use on briefing each other on what the health impacts of climate change are. So yes, I'm with the Canadian Association of Nurses for the Environment, and it's a fantastic group, and we're getting on a lot of momentum now in Canada. And I just wanted to echo, I wanted to say fantastic presentations from my colleagues earlier on, and to say that I completely understand the teacher workload, and also for anybody who is an educator, the burnout that's associated with that. I think the pandemic really took its toll on education in general, and on all of us, of course. But I think I just appreciate these platforms and spaces that you are building to talk about climate change, which is, after all, actually the greatest threat of the 21st century. So I'm just going to start sharing my slides. Working at UBC, you get very much used to putting together presentations. So I'm going to do my best to not zoom too fast, but I'll make sure that if you have any follow-up questions, I'm happy to share the slides with you after all. So I'm going to provide a little bit of information from a nursing perspective, so a healthcare provider perspective, on what I think is important for anybody to understand about climate change. But first, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the beautiful land from which I'm joining you from, and that is also where I have the opportunity to work, live, and play on the unceded ancestral and traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples, including territories of the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh nations. And at UBC, I'm not at UBC right now, but this campus is, I think, is really privileged to sit on such beautiful land. So to that, I give thanks. So actually, I'm just going to start with a very, very brief overview on what climate change is. Probably most, if not all of you, are already familiar with what it is, but I think it's just important to highlight that when we talk about climate change, it's basically any significant change in the measure of climate that lasts for an extended period of time. So anything that has to do with changes in temperatures, precipitation, or wind patterns that typically occur over several decades or longer. And usually climate scientists, so those who are the experts in climate change, say that these periods of time tend to be looked at 30 years or longer. And climate change also involves changes in average conditions and changes in variability. So for example, when I talk about variability, I am referring to extreme weather events that we have seen increase in the frequency and extreme nature of them that are taking place in different places around the world. And I just want to mention that the Earth's climate has actually been changing throughout history. It's not something that's, unusual, but it's important to understand that climate change has two main kind of causes or factors. So the first and foremost has always been natural related causes that typically stem from the internal climate system. So when you have changes in volcanic activity, solar output, or how the Earth orbits around the sun, those all affect the incoming energy on the planet. And then the second cause, which is the human cause, or anthropogenic, which is another term that we are using nowadays, that we have specifically seen since the 1800s, as well, specifically when it comes to the fossil fuel burning since the Industrial Revolution onwards. And so when we talk about fossil fuel burning, those fossil fuels are your coal, natural gas, and oil. And as well, alongside the human causes, we also look at the conversion of land for animal husbandry and agriculture as well. So all these activities have led to the release of what we know as CO2 or carbon dioxide into our atmosphere alongside other greenhouse gases that have essentially acted like a warming blanket that's wrapped around the earth and essentially trapping the sun's heat and raising temperatures. And so obviously with more greenhouse gas emissions in the atmosphere, that temperature only increases over time. And so we are unfortunately on path to, although the Paris Agreement, as is said, to hold a steady 1.5 degree Celsius temperature, our current projections are unfortunately showing that we will move past this threshold. So we do have a very limited window of time in which we have to actually cut our emissions by 45% actually by 2030. And that obviously requires drastic measures from a governmental political perspective. So the reason why I'm saying this is before I get into the health impacts, just briefly to say, how do we know the climate is changing? Well, we know that there's a global temperature rise, warming and acidification of the oceans is ongoing. There's a decrease of ice sheet mass. We have retreating glaciers, earlier snow melt, sea level rise, and reduced Arctic ice alongside accelerated extreme events. And all of these are important to mention because they impact human health. And just to kind of wrap your minds around the carbon dioxide emissions that we have here in Canada by fuel type, and I recommend Our World in Data as a fantastic website that has all kinds of visuals. So for those of you who are wanting to kind of disseminate this kind of information in other circles, I find them very useful in showcasing really beautifully these kind of graphs. So you'll notice in Canada, we have our oil, gas industries are the biggest ones, and of course, coal as well, that contribute to high CO2 emissions. Now, shifting a little our gears towards what are those climate change impacts across Canada. And again, yes, these images might showcase to you, let's say if we look at the East Coast, for example, sea level rise and increased coastal erosion. I want to emphasize that we also will see sea level rise here on the West Coast as well. We will see things like increased pests, which are actually like the pine beetle, which are actually affecting forest productivity and fire activity, and reduced glacier cover, as well as how that water, specifically the water quality, will be affected. And the permafrost degradation up in the northern hemisphere as well is having huge impacts, especially on the indigenous populations that are living there and seeing the environmental landscape change at an accelerated pace, which is also affecting their ability to hunt safely, especially in the colder months when normally they would expect the ice to not be melting. So I could definitely spend an entire hour just speaking about those kind of impacts, but this is just to kind of showcase the various kind of effects we are seeing and we are going to continue seeing in Canada. This particular diagram actually comes from a recent report that was published by the Pacific Institute for Climate Solutions, which is based out of Victoria. And they have focused on what's in the forecast in BC. And so British Columbia as a province will see more extreme precipitation, more drought, unfortunately more severe and frequent wildfires, more flooding. Sea level will rise and put in peril, especially those individuals living on the coast, and warming oceans will affect ecosystems, especially also the biodiverse ecosystems that are depending on a homeostasis or balance of those specific ecosystems. And also BC's mainland is expected to see an annual increase of over 3 degrees Celsius by 2070, which will essentially translate into more heat-related events. But if we look to the COVID-19 pandemic, it's actually allowed us to kind of pause and rethink about what's important. And this specific report highlighted how, as we look to the future, the report speaks to the potential of telemedicine, how we green our infrastructure, how we design our cities, and also how do we reshift thinking about food security, food production, processing, packaging, and availability, and trying to actually just make use of what we already have here in this beautiful province and how we kind of go about to make sure that we're kind of adapting to a changing climate. So I might remind you that 2021 was a pretty heavy year for BC. And as a nurse, I'm noticing there's more attention being given to climate change. There's a lot of discussion, a lot of hype about it, but we really need to start talking about the health impacts of climate change. And so just, I just want to showcase in this specific diagram that is from the World Health Organization, that when we talk about climate change, we also highlight different levels of vulnerability. And so we talk about that through a social determinants of health and an equity lens. And so take, for example, if we select a demographic factor out in the vulnerability factors here on the screen, we know that populations, for instance, who are already experiencing marginalization, who may be experiencing homelessness, who may not have access to shelter, or who may be climate refugees, as well. Other vulnerable groups to mention are outdoor workers, the elderly, children, and mothers as well. So these are individuals who will experience any specific climate-related event at a higher magnitude. So for example, heat-related events, as we've seen with the heat dome. Then together with exposure pathways, so depending on what that level of exposure is, so if we take the heat dome again, we need to consider how people will actually be affected by the magnitude of that specific event. And of course, I mean, I don't have the time to actually go through all of these, but what I want to also tie in is how the health system responds and whether the health system has capacity and resilience in place, which of course would come from adequate leadership and sufficient government funding, a health workforce that is adequately staffed as well, as long as there's staff as well that are trained in these matters, again, sufficient service delivery and financing. All of these factors play a role essentially in how our systems respond to taking care of those who are exposed to these climate change related events. And then, of course, we have our climate sensitive health risks, which are the health outcomes that we are seeing and going to continue foreseeing into the future as a result of a warming climate. For example, more vector-borne diseases, malnutrition and foodborne diseases, as well as more non-communicable diseases. So non-communicable diseases are respiratory diseases or cardiovascular diseases. And of course, the mental health toll that comes with this changing climate and with how we're experiencing it is important to understand as well. This specific slide, again, I'm actually one to, this showcases in a very broken down way what are those specific health impacts that are attributed to climate change. And I teach a course on the health impacts of climate change at UBC. Anybody can register for it. It's nursing to 90. But in that course, we spend time talking about each of these aspects. And so if I were to just kind of zoom in a little bit on children, because I think children's health is something that we actually need to be talking about more when it comes to our changing climate. And so children can unfortunately be disproportionately affected by these other climate change related events because they metabolize water, air, and food per kilogram of body weight at a much more accelerated rate than adults. And also we know that their rapid growth and developmental as well as physiologically dynamic systems and risk exposure over a longer life course can increase their vulnerability to environmental hazards. And so, I think it's really important if I were to just pinpoint on one aspect. So let's say, for example, if we have our air quality here in the lower mainland is affected when we experience wildfire smoke. And so it's really important to start becoming acquainted what the air quality index is and what does it mean? How do I interpret that as a parent? How do I interpret that as if I'm youth? And what does that mean for my child's health? And so it's about raising awareness about these kind of issues as to when those climate change related events happen, we know the kind of actions and the public health measures we hope that the public will take. And so I think it's important to know that with children, especially, they're more predisposed to heat and cold related morbidity or illness. Natural hazards and extreme weather events can also cause injury and death, as well as with increased air pollution, these actually can contribute to more respiratory illnesses, more asthma attack exacerbations, as well as how their entire developmental ability is going to be potentially affected, especially when it comes to younger children who are exposed from an earlier life state than others. So this is actually a diagram that's from the World Health Organization, and actually around the world right now, our children are very, very vulnerable when it comes to how air pollution affects their health and well-being, because it is known as a silent killer, which we don't really think about the air quality. I would say that I'm quite surprised to see in the summertime when we have wildfires, there's still a ton of kids at the playgrounds with their parents. And I've seen days where you couldn't even see like the mountains and that the air quality is poor. And so as a nurse, I am frustrated because I'm more hopeful that I can raise awareness through a webinar like this to say that when you try to monitor the air quality in the summertime and try to keep kids indoors as much as possible when that AQI is poor, because I cannot express how detrimental it can be to their health and well-being. As you'll note, it'll stunt brain development, it can reduce lung function, it can contribute to cancer. So for example, if you're living in an area or an environment whereby you're constantly exposed to really low air quality, in the long run, more individuals are going to be bound to develop chronic respiratory illnesses, and cancer is one of them. And so you'll notice here that nearly 1 million children die from pneumonia each year, and most of those are associated with air pollution. So the more awareness we can raise, the better. And the reason why we care is also because with a changing climate, I just wanted to show you how, for instance, the particulate matter, or PM, specifically, we have here PM 2.5. We also have PM 10, which PM 10 is not as dangerous, but that's not to say that it's not dangerous or detrimental to health. But PM 2.5 is the one that we're worried about, especially in wildfire season, because if the AQI is very poor, we do know that the PM 2.5 matter is going to be high. And this has very negative repercussions, not only on children, but on all of us, because PM 2.5 can cross the blood-brain barrier and can lead to other health impacts that can essentially be showcased in more emergency department visits, hospitalizations, and in some cases, death. So again, it's really important to understand the public health measures that we can be undertaking to essentially protect ourselves and protect our children from detrimental health impacts. So that was a very flash kind of information on health impacts. And I'm just gonna kind of try to end the last couple of slides on solutions and things that we like to talk about, at least in healthcare, that hopefully can inspire people to make some changes. But we are essentially at a point in time where we are called upon to try to transition away from an ego model of seeing ourselves on this earth at the top of this pyramid per se, but rather embedded in what's a system where we're essentially coexisting with our environment, coexisting with our natural world. And this brings me to the term of planetary health. And maybe some of you may have heard of it, some of you may be new to it, but basically planetary health is a concept that stemmed in 2015. And it's essentially a solution-oriented transdisciplinary field and social movement focused on analyzing and addressing the impacts of human disruptions to Earth's natural systems on human health and all life on Earth. So basically, the core message of planetary health is that there's a symbiotic relationship between the natural world and the human world, so or human health. So which is why, as we look to the future, we need to understand that, for instance, climate change is actually situated under this larger umbrella that is called coined planetary health. And again, I could offer more details, but just for the sake of time, happy to discuss with parents or whoever's interested afterwards as well. And so as we look to the solution seeking, to all my students in my class, I always start off with this model of a micro, meso, macro approach, because I think people think that if climate change, they look at climate change and think, well, there's nothing I can do about it. It's clearly something that I have no control over, whereas I would actually argue against that and say that you do have control over certain aspects of your life, and that's more your micro level approach, the level of the individual and what actions individuals can take. And then the meso, which is more part of the community, the system, smaller groups and smaller organizations, and then that trickles down into the macro, which is our society as a whole, political, economical, and social factors. And so some of these excerpts are, for instance, from UNICEF. Actually, it's interesting, I read this, but they're calling for an increased investment in climate adaptation and resilience in specific key services for children, the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, and the provision of children with climate education and green skills, as we learned from Dr. Lim, when we start engaging children and youth in these climate-based activities. And I'll give an example in a later slide. We actually get to promote more pro-social behaviors and start building communities of trust, which then, of course, brings us together as it kind of trust is our social cohesion kind of glue. And so it's also important to include young people in all national, regional, and international climate negotiations and decisions, and ensure the recovery of the pandemic is green and low carbon as well. And so, this is another infographic from the Lancet, which is intertwined with the planetary health concept that I introduced. But again, it just highlights some of the things that we can be doing at the micro level. So for example, trying to reduce our food waste, trying to advocate for better governance in our systems. Ending deforestation is huge because when we end deforestation, we're actually removing another means through which CO2 is released into the atmosphere. And of course, using water more efficiently, because we have to stop seeing water as an infinite source, because it's actually a finite source. And as a nurse, I also want to say, with summer coming up soon, it's really important, especially in light of the heat dome and the devastation of the loss of 800 people during only a week. I think it's really important to be mindful of the kind of activities that we're undertaking to protect ourselves when the temperatures are too hot for us. And so some of the things, of course, in addition to staying hydrated, I think it's important to wear lighter clothing, making sure that we have drapes and shades to keep our places cool. Of course, for those who have the luxury to afford AC or fans, that is great. But I would also say the caveat of ACs is actually that they contribute to emissions. So it's a double-edged sword. And ensuring that we're checking up on each other, because actually of the 800 people who passed away last year, it was found that actually most of them were socially isolated and had no social support. So just keeping that in mind. And I mentioned the AQHI, or the Air Quality Health Index. Becoming acquainted with this simply by going to the Government of Canada's website and looking up to understand how this scale works, and knowing exactly where that rating is, and to know how to protect yourself, or whether it's safe for you to be outdoors, and if not, what are the kind of different activities that you can be undertaking. I've got 4 slides left, and then I'll be done. Some of the other initiatives that are also recommended are things like, for instance, if we volunteer to serve on local or regional planning committees, especially for our cities, in order to actually contribute to maybe how urban planning for that specific area where you're living in is planned. So, we want to have urban, suburban neighborhoods that are safe to walk, safe to be in, more walkable, that have more bike pathways, that actually build their initiatives to having or planting more trees, because trees provide us with shade. And also facilitating transfer of outdoor sports to indoor facilities when the air quality is poor. And as well, I would say letting kids know that their voices and advocacy can be powerful, because I think when they can see role models who are engaging in this, especially their parents, I feel they're more likely to become champions for a more sustainable world to be a part of. And this is actually, I highly recommend to anybody on this call, shoreline cleanup challenges. I've organized one myself for my School of Nursing at UBC, and some people came with their parents. So basically you come together, you select a beach or you select a park if you're not near the coast, and you can spend however many hours you want. Actually, the city of Vancouver can lend you equipment to clean up the shores, and then you can weigh your whatever you've cleaned up, and you also can get certificates of participation and acknowledgement for that. And it's a really fun way to get engaged and give back to the planet. So that's another great way to contribute. And this is actually a toolkit that was designed by a graduate student that I supervised. So talking about climate change, I must have probably, for some of you, may be shocked some of the information that I spoke about, or it may provoke some anxiety. So this toolkit is actually hot off the press, and it's for anybody to use basically, and it's a very reflective-based approach to understanding our earth emotions, we call them. So eco-anxiety, ecological grief, and eco-paralysis, all of which stem from how climate change makes us feel. So I think for educators in schools, they can be fantastic ways to delve into conversations with students, to talk about these feelings and to try to understand how these feelings are making us act with respect to our environment. And again, happy to, if you look this up, you can actually find a toolkit. And there's also a 25-minute documentary that my student has filmed. And I'm showcasing it, as well as Dr. Melissa Lim and Dr. Courtney Howard, who are also fantastic advocates in sustainability. And these, again, are some of the ways in which, as a nurse, I've been involved in the sphere for only 3 years. And as you actually, I had an interview, Global News, about this film just Saturday. And I've also just finished designing a case study on wildfires in British Columbia, which will be made available as an open education resource. So again, I'm trying to aim these kind of tools to as many educational facilities as possible. And I'm happy to share the link with Sky when I have it up and running. And some of my policy papers and involvements with the Association of Nurses, as well as multiple presentations in different spheres. So thank you so much for paying attention. That is all, and I'm happy to connect with you by email if you have any follow-up questions.
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry if I was super fast-paced. I just try to cover a lot of ground.
That was absolutely amazing. That was really, really amazing. Yeah, I'm just going to try and find my spotlight again. And so I'll remove your spotlight and I'll spotlight me, I guess, if I can find out where out there. I guess I have to put myself back on, right? So anyhow, thank you so much for that. It was really fantastic. And I can't even find my little thing here. Well, that's fine. Anyhow, I think so. The next person, so the next group we're going to individually go to sort of get the perspective from parents. I'm going to Lorna Pelly is going to speak first, and then Jinhua Huang Ambrose is going to speak after. And those two parents are both from For Our Kids. So I'm just going to look here just for a second and find where she is in the presenting skew here. Let's see, where is that? I know sometimes it's easier to find than others, and today it seems to be a little bit more challenging. So Lorna, there you are, great. So I'm going to spotlight yours, and I just wanted to do just a little brief introduction, if you don't mind, just to sort of let everyone know just a little bit more about you. And I know that you're a mom of 2 boys, and that you live in North Van, and that you've been with For Our Kids for a little while. I know you got lots of great information because you have experience at the national level, so you have a bit more overview from what happens on all of Canada. So she's worked on climate change in the climate change sector for 2 decades now, and so she much of that was with the multinational NGO in London, so in the UK, and the Forum for Future. So before moving to Canada 5 years ago, so we're happy to have her here now and contributing to the stuff that we're working on here in Canada. So with that, I will pass it over to you.
Hey, thanks, Sky, and thanks everyone for this opportunity. It's really fun evening, and thanks for the previous speakers for setting us up. Yeah, as Sky said, so I've got 2 boys, and I volunteer at the moment with For Our Kids, and I also work for the national support team. Just want to acknowledge that I'm talking to you from the unceded territory of the Coast Salish people, particularly the Musqueam and Tsleil-Waututh. And what I want to talk to you about this evening is why more and more parents are starting to take action on climate change. I want to talk to you about 3 things. So why parents are taking action, what's motivating them, the types of action that they're taking, and what they're getting out of it personally. And then what I'm going to do is pass over to Jinhua, who's a fellow mum and climate activist, and she's just going to talk about her personal journey, about what's inspired her to take climate action. So just firstly, I just want to explain who For Our Kids is. So we're a grassroots network of parents, grandparents, caregivers, uncles, aunts, really anyone who's got a child in their life who is concerned about climate change and what that could mean for their kids' future. And we really are a network where we set up 3 years ago to connect people like that and to help them take action. So within 3 years, we've now got 25 teams of parents working across Canada who have all volunteered and stepped up and come to us. And I think we've got people in most provinces. And what we do firstly is just help those parents connect, help them find people in their local area. And then when they're ready, then we help them form a team or to take action independently. And we're just there to support them with the admin and the training that they need. So why is it that more parents are coming and being motivated to actually take action on climate? So firstly, the motivation to act on behalf of your child is incredibly powerful. And I'm sure all of us here would always put our kids first and want to keep them safe every day. And it's almost like climate change has become that ultimate challenge of parenting. And so we're seeing more and more parents sort of step forward and saying, what is it that I can do? Coupled with that is the fact that our kids are going to live longer than us, and they're going to be the people experiencing the outcomes of whatever inaction our governments and decision makers make today. So it becomes all the more important to stand up and act on their behalf. So what are parents telling us? Well, we have monthly welcome calls every month, and I would say at almost every welcome call we hear some version of eco-anxiety, which is sort of the official term for it. But it's parents coming to us, they feel concerned, they feel worried, they feel overwhelmed by the issue of climate change, but also they want to learn and they want to find out what they can do. They want to understand what their place is in this big battle that we're facing. And so what we do is we help people through those concerns, and what we're trying to do is help them on the journey from going from anxiety to find the anecdote of anxiety, which is action. And so when they are ready and when they feel inspired and when they feel confident, we'll help them take climate action. And it's entirely up to the parents what they do. They are the decision makers and the leaders in every action that we do. We're just there to help support them. So what I wanted to show you now, I'm just going to very quickly share my screen just to show you a few examples of actions that parents have taken. So this is just a few pictures of the types of stuff that we get up to. So we involve kids, we'll do some of our actions will be within schools. Sometimes we'll just set up meetings and we'll have guest speakers so we can learn more together. We'll take demonstrations. Some groups want to work on a very local level and just want to plant a garden and maybe do something at their school. And sometimes we get kids along, you know, making posters and sort of doing age appropriate things at climate meetings. So sometimes parents will come to us and they want to connect nationally, and so we can help them do that. In particular, a couple of years ago when Bill C-12 came through, which was the Canada's first climate change act of Parliament, the parents really stepped up and said, we want to do something about this. So we connected teams across Canada, and they were speaking, you know, representing parents at the select committee and speaking in the House of Commons and things like that. But also we do lots of just local action. So we'll send letters to our MPs, we'll have meetings with our MPs. People take young kids and have play dates and council meetings to show you, you know, these are the people that we're voting for in the future. And we'll just do sort of simple actions with our kids at home. So, you know, just learning to connect and talk with your children about climate change and having those conversations in age appropriate ways is something that we're always learning together. So that's just a couple of examples of the types of things that parents have been doing. And the last thing I just wanted to say is, what are the parents getting out of all of this? So the first thing that we always hear is that they really appreciate just connecting with other people who feel the same way that they do. So finding people that they can have conversations with and finding people that they can take action with. So you can take individual action, but collective action tends to, first of all, spread the weight of the work, but also has more impact if you're trying to make change at an institution or policy level. So that would be either with a team like For Our Kids, or within your PAC, or within an environmental group or a neighbourhood group. So that first thing is that really sort of strong connection. But also I wanted to talk about the connection that people are experiencing with their children. So a lot of parents are coming to us when they've got kids at high school stage, and they want to learn about climate change because their kids are learning about it, and they want to act with them. So they want to have that solidarity with their children and take action alongside their kid and go on that learning journey with them. And that's been really powerful for some parents. I know that your teenage children may not necessarily want to actually hang out with you and go on a demonstration with you, but to see their mum and dad take action in something that's important to them has been really powerful for some parents. And lastly, just to say, it's been a very positive thing for mental health. So as Raluca just mentioned, this is impacting people's mental health. And, you know, the barrier to taking climate action is always, we don't have the time, as I'm sure you are all volunteer parents and you know what it's like trying to squeeze another thing into your busy lifestyles. But when you do carve out that time, the feedback that we're getting is that people feel so good that they've done something in this kind of incredibly large, overwhelming, very negative problem. To do one positive thing can really help. So that's just some insight about parents that are becoming advocates for climate change. And I just wanted to finish by saying that parents really do have a voice. The fact that parents are stepping up and doing things about climate change has been really well received. And it's important that parents do step up and stand alongside the scientists and alongside the engineers and alongside the doctors and the nurses, and really importantly, alongside the youth, to let them know that they're not alone in this. So thanks for that. And I want to pass now to Jinhua, who's got some really great stories to tell you about her experience.
All right, just 1 second. I'm just gonna add a spotlight. And at the same time, I just want to also also mention to everybody, so everybody who's a presenter, please add your links, because we've had some questions from parents is, how do I get in touch with these people? How do I find more about the presenters and the work that they're doing? So if you can please, but we're gonna save the chat, so we'll have questions if we don't get to all of them today, and we'll also have all the links. So please put those in there. And also parents, if you and participants, if you have questions right now, and we should have a little bit of time at the end to ask some questions. So just please put them into chat. We have one of the other execs, Ellen, I think, and Gord are looking at the chat to pick out some of the questions that are coming. So please put those in there. And so now I'm going to, we're going to remove our spotlights and pass it over. I just wanted to just do a quick introduction, if you don't mind, for so she is local, Vancouver. So her child is just entering into kindergarten this coming year. So so I think this stuff speaks very strongly. And also I think the thing about anxiety and how to deal with it is something that that Jinhua is going to bring to us in terms of how do you deal with those things? How do you as a parent find ways to healthy ways to be able to battle some of those feelings and really feel like you're making a difference and empower yourself. So she's volunteered for numerous climate action projects over the past 3 years, and she's very passionate about supporting people to envision and build a climate safe future for the next generation. So I'm sure she's really looking forward to networking with other parents. And so I'm sure she's going to give us some information on how to get in touch with her.
Thank you so much, Sky. Thank you, District PAC, for having me. So great to hear the other presenters. Lorna, your presentation set up what I'm going to say so well, because what Lorna describes, you know, basically I'm going to describe my specific experience of. I am joining you from the traditional and stolen territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh Nations in so-called Vancouver. And as Sky mentioned, my daughter will start kindergarten at Henry Hudson Elementary in the fall. So I'm going to spend the next 6 or so minutes sharing how I stepped into climate action as someone with no background in climate change or in activism. Doing any kind of work that put myself out there was frankly horrifying. So my hope is to show you that you don't need to be an expert to engage in climate work, and that engaging in climate work can be incredibly meaningful. So there's a few parts to my story, and the first part is becoming aware that climate change is truly a crisis. So in October of 2018, when my little daughter was still a baby, I saw an article entitled, "We have 12 years to limit catastrophic climate change, warns UN." So maybe you remember seeing similar headlines around that time. So the article described a new report at the time from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is a highly respected body of the United Nations, whose role is to assess global climate data. A little bit about that data in the report. I promise I'll keep it brief, but I think it's important because it underlies the urgency that so many people, and especially the youth, are feeling. So the report compared the impacts of 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming above pre-industrial levels with 2 degrees Celsius of warming. It seems small, but a half a degree has a big impact. And 1.5 degrees of warming is generally seen as the most warming that humanity can cope with without widespread economic and social impacts. And right now we're experiencing a little over 1 degree Celsius of temperature rise. So the report went on to say that to keep global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius, emissions had to be cut in half by 2030 and reach 0 by 2050, hence the headline, 12 years to limit catastrophic climate change. And I'm so grateful that Raluca did such a wonderful job unpacking the climate science further. So I won't touch on that anymore, but I think it's important to bear that in mind. So here I was with a little baby. I was learning this information for the first time. It was a truly devastating and huge moment. I looked at my baby and I thought, everything I do is to keep her safe. Everything I do is to give her the best shot at a good life. And I wondered, what kind of life might she have if the adults around her didn't rise to this challenge? Climate change suddenly felt very personal, but I didn't know what to do. I had a high school level education. My work life had been in coffee shops and childcare. I just didn't know where to find the skills to help. And then I remembered that I'd seen an interview where a climate scientist had said that limiting temperature rise to 1.5 is in fact possible within the realms of chemistry and physics, and we actually do know how to do it. The only variable is the political will to implement the solutions. And so I thought to myself, well, maybe I can be part of swaying political will. I just had to learn how to do that, and I had to find other people to do it with. So finding my place in a climate community, I started talking about climate change with everyone that I knew. My spouse, my parents, my in-laws, my friends, my hairstylist. I researched organizations doing work on climate justice. I signed up to their newsletters. I joined in their actions. I emailed them asking for advice. I spoke with anyone who agreed to talk with me about climate change. I came to realize that the beauty of a problem as big as climate change is that there is a role for everyone in solving it. Each person has unique skills, networks, and passions, and the place where these three intersect can be magic, especially when combined with the magic of other people. There are so many ways to be involved, but I personally became fascinated with building political will for change, and I started lobbying politicians. So over the last 3 years, I've been part of meetings with politicians at the municipal, provincial, and federal levels, advocating for stronger climate policy. I did one of these meetings on my own, but all the rest were as part of a team, sometimes with Citizens Climate Lobby, Doctors for Planetary Health, Babies for Climate Action, for our kids. And in the first few meetings, I felt very nervous and out of place, and was grateful to be shown the ropes, but slowly came to understand the process. And my favorite contribution so far has been speaking to Vancouver City Council on their Climate Emergency Action Plan. I wouldn't have had the courage to do it on my own, but a number of us who were speaking formed a group chat. I think one of them is here tonight, and cheered each other on by text message as we took turns presenting. And the plan did pass. It was so beautiful to celebrate it with others. So I'll just close with a few things that I've learned. I have so much left to learn. I'm really very much a beginner at this. But I've learned that working on climate issues as part of a team can increase both impact and resilience. Climate change is painful, but as a group, we can share our losses and our victories. I've learned the importance of taking time to envision the climate safe future we are building. What do climate forward homes look like? What do climate forward cities look like? What do climate forward schools look like? the more vividly we can picture this future, the better equipped we are to create it. And lastly, I've learned to see myself as an ancestor to those who are not yet born and as someone who is responsible to them. When I get discouraged, I remember that I'm not doing this for myself, I'm doing this for the kids of today and the kids who will come. What would they want us to do in these critical years where there's still a bit of time left to give them a chance at a good life? I've learned that climate action is absolutely an act of love. And that's all from me. Thanks for having me.
Wow. Thank you so much. And I know that your words have touched a lot of people, and the genuineness of what you have just shared, just incredible. So thank you. Thank you so much for doing that. So we have one more person who's going to join us. So I know I don't want to pass by where you've just brought us without really, saying how humbled I feel from what you just offered. So thank you for that. So now I'm going to add to our screen, we have the last person of this evening's presenting is going to be George Radner, and he is the executive director with Be the Change. And I'm just going to get him up here on with me. And so welcome, George. And so he's got quite an extensive profile of the things that he's done. So besides being part of Be the Change Earth Alliance, and delivering climate and environmental education, social justice education, all the rest that are part of the resources that he's been working. He's he's working with BC high schools right now. They brought some of the things into some schools that are starting to look at some of those resources. He's got a lot of recognition in terms of top sustainability leaders under 30, he really is working to empower teachers and build workshops and curriculum resources and all the rest of it. And I know he's going to share that. And I really why he is coming at the end is because he has quite a lot of breadth in the stuff that he is involved in. I know he works with teachers. I know he works with students. I know he works with networks, and he's working with government and a whole bunch of other things. So he's doing some really great stuff. He does hold a bachelor's degree, honors degree in economics from UBC. And I'll let him speak a little bit more about all the rest of the stuff that he has been involved in and what he's working on now. But anyhow, with that, thank you so much, and over to you.
Thanks so much, Sky. It's and to all the other speakers, it's a pleasure to be able to try to wrap it all up, and I'm really going to build on what everyone else has shared. I want to start with a story, and I will never forget the words that a high school student named Natalie wrote in a letter urging Vancouver City Council to take climate action. And it was her birthday that day, and she wrote, "I turned 14 today. But instead of celebrating with my friends and family, I'm here asking for my future. I want to grow old, have a family, something that shouldn't be a luxury." We know that Natalie is not alone. And in fact, in a survey that Be the Change conducted, we found that 87% of students grades 5 to 7 are concerned about climate change, and about half of them experience negative emotions due to climate change, like grief, anxiety, hopelessness, at least once a week. And this chronic climate anxiety is compounded by the pandemic with stress and isolation. And unfortunately, we are genuinely witnessing an emergent youth mental health crisis. Partly in response to this, a student movement called Climate Education Reform BC has emerged and is advocating for changes to the education system at all levels so that every student can receive empowering intersectional climate education. And we know, we've heard from Colin, that teachers need more support, training, and resources to teach on climate change. Our survey found that 67% of teachers spent less than 10 hours per year across all their courses covering climate change. So students are really not receiving much climate education, and what they are receiving often reinforces the doom and gloom narrative that we see in the media and, of course, in real life, living through floods, heat waves, wildfire smoke. And this is where Be the Change Earth Alliance comes in. So we are a charity founded in 2005 that has been working in the school system for over a decade. And we're founded right here on Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh territories in so-called Vancouver. And our mission is to educate and empower youth to take action on climate change and other environmental issues. And we mainly do that through supporting teachers. Teachers are our route to reaching youth. Our flagship program is called Student Leadership for Change, or SLC. And SLC was developed with teachers over an iterative collaborative process. And you might be interested to know that parent advisory committees in Vancouver actually really helped get SLC off the ground through providing Be the Change some funding. And now we're excited to say that SLC is free for all teachers, and it is a library of online learning resources that enable teachers to bring progressive and meaningful climate and environmental education to their students. And I'm going to show you a little bit about SLC. We currently have over 1,200 teachers actively registered for these learning resources across BC in over 200 schools and 48 school districts in BC. But I guess I want to be clear that I'm not trying to give a sales pitch. We're a charity and we've developed these learning resources and they're free. We just want to get them out there because we know teachers need them. We know students are calling for climate education, and we feel that it's our prerogative to work with all partners in the school system to get SLC learning resources into the classroom. SLC is the main learning resource is called an action pack. And these action packs each focus on a specific topic, and they guide students on an amazing journey of learning and reflection and action and critical thinking, which I'm going to briefly show you a snippet of. And SLC aligns with the First People's principles of learning. And now we are working with VSB Sustainability actually right here in Vancouver to get SLC in a number of programs really embedded into Vancouver schools. So I think I think I'd like to. I only have 10 minutes and only 5 left, but I'd like to just give you a brief snapshot into what SLC looks like through a little screen share. So again, this is a free online library of learning resources. I'm gonna go through it kind of quickly, but just to give you a sense. So this is the home page. The bottom of the home page, there's this directory that shows SLC learning resources that we've created that correlate with a bunch of different subjects, particularly for grades 5 to 12, as well as different topics. And climate change is one of our most popular topics. We have tons of climate change learning resources. I mentioned action packs. So action packs are our main learning resource. We have 45 action packs, and they cover a huge range of topics, even beyond climate change. There's a lot on health, conservation, social emotional connection, justice, etc. And Sky was kind of alluding to our focus on the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which is an increasing focus for us. The SDGs are a great way to pull together a range of environmental and social and health and justice topics together. So we've got some new resources on the SDGs. Why don't I just briefly show you what an action pack actually looks like. So I chose the Climate Justice Action Pack because it's one of our most popular ones. Students constantly tell their teachers and us, we need climate justice education. So as you can perhaps see already, this learning resource is a PDF. It's fillable, so I can write my name and fill it out or print it. And usually these are completed in groups of 3 to 5 students over a period of a few weeks. It's an experiential project. And I don't have time to show you every section, but I just wanted to give you some highlights. each action pack starts with a worldview and a values survey, asking students to think about their values and presenting Indigenous wisdom so students can unpack the ego, which Luca brought up, and maybe move towards the eco in their thinking. It is an action pack, that's what it's called, and the action survey is a really key component of the action pack. So for each of the 45 topics, we have 16 to 20 actions students can take tangibly right away. They're organized into personal actions, household actions, school actions, and community actions. So from recycling or reducing organic waste all the way to attending a protest, these are all ways students can take action. And they begin by indicating actions they've already done, and then they can pledge new actions and then record what actions they've taken over the process. That is kind of the core of the action pack. Students then go on to do some global research, which is guided by a curated library of research links. They do a hands-on local activity, which involves family members or community members. They do some critical thinking about the issue, climate justice in this case. They reflect on the experience of taking action. What was it like to actually take action on a topic? And then finally, they present their knowledge and experience back to their class through a group creative presentation. And I know I went through this really fast, and you probably couldn't read much in the process, but the good news is anyone, any parents can jump on our website and download these free action packs. And I really believe that parents play a super crucial role in the education system, DPAC especially, as well as the local packs. And that if more principals and teachers were aware of these free learning resources, I do think we would see a lot more comfort with those teachers. You know, the passionate teachers will always do it. We had Colin present earlier. He's always going to be on the front lines, climate education. But we need to reach a majority of teachers to eventually reach majority, if not all students. And that's really our goal. Be the Change Earth Alliance also recognizes that we need to shift the education system. That's what students are calling for. And programs like ours, learning resources alone, probably can't do that. So I also want to pose a question to PAC members. You know, what role could individual parents, local PACs, and even DPAC play in advancing climate education at a more systemic level? And we're really hoping to bring together some stakeholders within Vancouver, because we're partnered with VSB Sustainability, to talk with teachers and parents and students and EPSA chapter members to think about what can we do in this district to make change and get all students engaging on climate education. And there is my timer. That's 10 minutes. So I want to thank you so much for listening, and I will pop some links and my email in the chat.
And I fully intend to make sure that we bring you back next year if I get that chance. So, yeah, I'm just so, and I'm just going to bring everybody back who is a presenter, because we're going to go into the Q&A. And so I just want to bring everyone back on screen here. So that we can have a little bit of time to be able to have a conversation. Toganon, can you turn on your video screen for us? And let's see, I'm trying to find, I think Colin is gone, but Toganon, are you there? Let's see, there we go. And so I think what's going to happen, I think there may be some questions. Maybe Alan, do you want to, is there some questions that you have gathered, or Gord, is there some questions that from our audience that people have asked or want to ask the panelists or anyone in particular?
Oh, I've been following. Well, okay, Alan, you go for it.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to say tons of supportive and interested comments and a lot of appreciation for links people have posted, but actually people haven't put any specific questions in the chat at this point.
I did actually have a question. I did have some questions. I was mindful of time, but now that we're at that time for a conversation. I'm really curious about what George brought forward, and just trying to understand the work that you are doing with the sustainability committee, like the VSB sustainability, what that involvement looks like, and what comments they've had on the toolkits that you've created.
Sure. Yeah, thanks for that. Great question. Well, VSB Sustainability Department and Be the Change Earth Alliance are developing a great working relationship and collaboration. And that is because Be the Change's programs, including SLC, really advance the Vancouver School Board's sustainability strategy, which you may be aware of. So the sustainability committee, or I guess department, has reviewed SLC in depth and is also really familiar with our other programs like workshops, mentorship opportunities for clubs, teacher professional development, and is really taken a huge step in helping endorse us and promote our work to Vancouver teachers. And we're building something really reciprocal, because we know that VSB sustainability, its mandate is to help students and teachers taking action and engaging in learning around environmental and climate topics. And yeah, we're working to support them too. So it's been a beautiful kind of emergent partnership.
Thank you. And who's the main staff contact that you would normally go through?
Yeah, Ashley Bangsend and Laura Nickerson are the two we're in close touch with. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I have a question. Do we see any other hands up right now? I'm just curious. Anybody have a question? I'm looking, don't see any hands at the moment, but again, if anyone does have one, I don't want to jump in here, but I did have a question that relates to, because I know that in talking with Toganon, that a lot of waste gets shipped over to different parts in Africa, and it is a huge problem. I did a little bit of study on what was going on there, and I think that ties in with what Raluca was sort of talking about in terms of the air pollution. So I know that Toganon was telling me about, collecting all of this plastics, but some of the plastics collected and can be sorted and can be put in recycling, but there's an awful lot of additional waste that isn't, and that is burnt. And so there's a lot of burning of plastics, which from what I understand, it's a very temporary, but it is about 2,000 times more impacting to global warming for the amount of time that it's actually in the atmosphere. And on top of that, it is a huge health concern. So I'm just wondering, particularly Toganon and Raluca, but if anyone else has some more information, but if you two could address that, that would be great.
Toganon, do you want to go first? I'm just mindful of your energy levels.
Okay, so thank you so much for the discussion. So particularly here in Mali, exactly we try to burn plastic here. So what we are trying to do is that we ask the local authorities so that we can connect with the recycling companies, because burning plastic everywhere in the community is not good for our health. So what we are trying to do is to get in touch with recycle companies, so that they can, wherever we have a good number of plastic in the community, so we call them so that they can come and collect those plastic. We think that's better than burning plastic in the community. So, and after that, because many students in the schools, they are trying to have problems with breathing, whenever, even many people, they are trying to burn plastic near those schools. And that's something that we're trying to fight every day, And now what we are trying to do, we first sensitize the families not to burn plastic, not only around schools, but even in the community. They don't have to do this. Just whenever they have plastic, so they can call us or call companies. We give them companies contact, so that even they can contact them directly, or they can contact us so that we can tell those companies to come and collect plastic. It's the kind of solution that we are trying to find in order to reduce this air pollution. Yeah. Thank you.
I feel like you've made such good coverage with respect to that, especially with respect to your context. But I think I would just add, you know, from a health impact, I mean, what concerns me is the fact that here in Canada, we, you know, this may not necessarily relate to plastic specifically, but I would say that, you know, waste management facilities, we know, especially even if I were to use the example of the Chemical Valley out in Sarnia in Ontario, a lot of communities experience what's known as environmental racism, whereas they're living on the outskirts of, like, right nearby of these waste facilities. So I think, you know, we have a role to play in order to protect the health of people who are living nearby such facilities, to advocate for change. And also, I mean, being a bit more mindful as to sometimes, even if here in the Lower Mainland, I'm noticing where new developments are built, I'm seeing a townhome development complexes built right like by Highway 1 outside, you know, like as you drive towards Surrey. And I'm just in awe because the proximity to being close to such a busy road where you have serious emissions from vehicles that are just passing by all these streets can be huge, like they can be really huge contributors to poor air quality that any one of us would be breathing in. So I think that, you know, I think Togonan is doing such an incredible job in his context. And I think that we should also be looking here in our own backyards and seeing that a lot of the things that are happening are not accounting for the environmental exposure to toxins that we are predisposed to. And so I think this is a kind of session where you can have that access to that information. And if you are at any level involved with a municipal committee, these are the kind of topics that you can raise awareness about. So hopefully that's helpful.
Just maybe one little tag onto that. I read something about the endocrine system with plastics. Is there something you know about the effect of plastics on the endocrine system and sexual development?
Well, what I know from what has literally, I just saw there was a report launched, I would say a few weeks ago, but my workload has been so high, I've been having a hard time keeping up with emerging literature. The one thing that I know, and you might have seen this in the news as well, is that now microplastics are found in, you know, like mammary gland tissues and essentially like the food that we may consume. And so I think that, from what I've understood in the report, that can play a role in genetic disruption. So that can essentially contribute to potential illnesses that individuals develop. And I think that this research is just starting to emerge as we speak, as people have studied plastics more closely and have looked at how they can actually disrupt development, especially, you know, fetus development while the mothers are pregnant. So it really does depend on exposure levels and on trying to minimize, you know, any plastics as much as possible, which I think in this day and age, again, we have a lot of work ahead of us if we are to eliminate it.
Yeah.
So does there anyone, I don't think we have any more questions pending right now, but does everyone want to just maybe have a last minute of just maybe a comment? Oh, there's a raised hand. Is there a raised hand?
2 raised hands.
Okay, raised hands. Okay, so we'll go with Ishi first. Is that right?
Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate everybody's sharing. Learned a lot. I'm really happy you're all out there doing what you're doing. One of the things that I see a lot of sort of overlapping issues related to climate change, and one of the big ones that keeps coming up in all these contexts is agriculture, and that's another aspect of our survival that's very connected to the climate issues. I mean, even locally here, but also I remember shooting a documentary in Malawi and Kenya and Uganda and seeing the impacts of sort of poor agriculture practices, like you know, kind of genetically modified foods and synthetic fertilizers and those kinds of impacts on the environment there. I'm just wondering if you guys could speak to any efforts that you know of that are happening connected to agriculture locally or around the world.
Okay, can I speak here?
Please go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, about concerning the agriculture, so we also work, during my presentation, I forgot to mention this place, because we try to give local seeds to farmers, because we don't want people to eat products that have been made from pesticide or chemical product like this. So what we are trying to do is to promote local seed. So we give them local seeds so that they can farm it. So we get they get foods from locally. So this is the best way for us to protect first about food security, and second, to preserve our health. This is something that we are trying to do. This every year we try to provide to look for different species of local seeds so that we can share with farmers and they can try to work on it. Yeah. It's what we are trying to do. Thank you.
Did any of the other presenters, Lorna or anybody, or Janwa, do you want to say anything about that, Janwa?
I mean, I'll just add, of course, there's so many pieces to the agriculture piece, Ishi. I don't know, like if you're speaking to the impacts of cattle in particular and linked to deforestation or problems with losing fertile soil or practices where soil loses its ability to absorb carbon. I guess it's all of those, isn't it? Probably more. Certainly in Vancouver, I've seen more and more urban farms that offer CSAs, so community shared agriculture. Sorry, my brain's getting tired. So that there certainly is that opportunity to support those folks locally who are growing food in a different way.
Anyone else have a comment for that, or else we'll go to? I think it was. Well, so I know we had one other hand up, so I think it was Eleanor. So does anyone have another want to add to that? Okay, so we'll go over to you, Eleanor. Would you like to ask your question?
Thank you. Yes. Thank you, everyone, for the wonderful presentations. That was really quite incredible. I see climate education in my school by my teachers, which is really heartening. And then I see things that don't match up with that, and that give the kids who are receiving the education the idea that this is something that adults say, but it's not something that we actually do. And to bring it up in schools where there's such a shortage of just everything, it feels a little bit like blaming protesters for driving to get there. This is the system we have, and we're doing the best we can. Does anyone have any recommendations for influencing the school administration, approaching parents through the PAC to move that, to really sort of, I don't know what I'm asking exactly, to grab everyone's imagination and to see that incongruousness and to get everyone working together to make our actions match our message.
I'll try and comment on that. That's an amazingly insightful comment and really big question. But yeah, I mean, that is something that we meet a lot, is that overweight, sort of, this is such a problem so big, And so that kind of defensive system that you see of like, oh, but you drove in a car to a climate change, or, you know, that this is all we have time for, or whatever. A lot of that defensiveness does actually stem from fear. Fear of the unknown, or fear of the truth, I think. And so you sort of have to take people quite gently through that realization process of what's actually going on here. Like, what are we actually talking about? And it is the survival of our planet. It's, as we talk about, like failure of agricultural systems, you know, it's all of those things. But then helping people, you know, inspiring them and meeting them at their level. So, you know, try not to overwhelm people too much that they feel completely unempowered or frozen because it's too much. So it's a very difficult journey, and everybody kind of has to do it at their own pace and find what is it that's motivating me, or what is it that's, and also what are the skills that I can bring? What is my space in this? And I think all you can do really is just to keep providing the information, keep providing the inspiration, whether it's through film or information or stories, or, you know, hearing from the kids, whatever it is, it will get to schools. Like, and you just have to feel confident that you're doing what you can, and you know, give what you can, and you will be touching people at some point. I don't think, so I don't think there's any kind of silver bullet answer, but I think, you know, doing what you can to keep the awareness continually there is really all you can do as a parent. But, you know, that is a fantastic contribution in itself.
And what about the administration of the school that's sort of, you know, the snacks that they provide in plastic wrappers and all of these small things? They have what they're trying to do with them has its place, but in the end, the kids are getting these mixed messages. Is there any recommendation for how to approach the administration? And maybe they see these things and they just, well, there's just nothing else we can do at this point. Is this something that I need to go to the VSP with, or to, I mean, not that it hasn't been done before. I guess I'm asking what level of government and how to approach them, by letter, by setting up a meeting. Jinwa, maybe I can tag along with you one day.
Yeah, Eleanor, I guess I would first figure out who is in charge of that decision, like who has the power to change that. And then you go to them. Happy to talk more about it.
Yeah,
and I would add,
because that sounds like a larger policy shift that would need to happen. It seems like.
Yeah, and I just to add, like the PACs have a really great role there. Like, I mean, different schools, their PACs work in different ways, but we've spoken to lots of parents that have taken up exactly that issue. Like, you know, that just really bugs me. Why is there all this plastic at lunch? And they will go and step forward and sort that out. And it doesn't work every time. Like, we had a mum who tried to give the kids fresh fruit. And so they cut up a mango and put every bit of mango in a small plastic container. And she was like, oh my God, I've made it worse, you know. But, you know, you just keep trying and you keep learning and you keep role modeling, because you're right, like kids need to see adults being the role models. And that's partly what this is all about. And whether that's just getting the lunch boxes right, or whether it's speaking to your MP, you know, the adults need to be showing them this is what good climate action looks like. But I mean, Jin was right. You've got to sort of do the power mapping and figure out who's making the decisions, and just, you know, influence where you can.
Especially in a time of sort of COVID / post-COVID, where we're reinstating Sports Day, but the fundraising we used to do with food sales now has to be all packaged all of a sudden. That pendulum has to swing back, and I need to help it swing. But I will approach them with that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, good luck.
Thanks.
I would just add, like echoing Jinwa and Lorna, that often, well, in terms of what's actually taught in the classrooms and whether there's space given and teachers are empowered and encouraged to teach climate education, often it's principals' fear of parent pushback that disempowers teachers. So I do think individual parents and PACs just telling the principals that this is a priority or even something they're going to hold them accountable to has an impact in the classroom. I mean, the issue of waste and emissions connected to lunch and all the sustainability of a school building, from its heat and its energy use, that stuff ultimately does come from the ministry. And Climate Education Reform BC, the student movement, does have as one of its core asks, demands, for the ministry to release a ton of funding to retrofit schools and kind of bring schools to more zero waste. And unfortunately, principals can't do much at that level. PACs might be able to if they're funding the lunch program, as someone mentioned in the chat. But yeah, that's a tough battle that I know students have been working on. And the students I know who've won in other districts, it's been like 9 years of advocacy to get a small win. So it's tough.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
I just wanted to quickly add, and I might have made this point clear in my presentation, but I also think that, I don't think it needs to be a health expert to say this, but I think that when you also present the issue as climate change as a health issue as well, and to try to make that connection to, administration, whatever levels that is at, understanding that if we don't take action, our health and well-being will suffer and our next generations will not thrive. I think that when we switch the messaging to pinpoint health at the center, we can grab more of that attention. And now we have physicians and nurses on board. So I think that when you're visiting your physicians and your nurse practitioners, you're seeing them for your health checkups. And so getting this in the conversation more can actually get then people in administrative position to start thinking about how to kind of make the change. And I would say that also if there's school programs or maybe even school projects can start shifting their curricula to maybe have more creative, innovative projects for the students as homework or assignments, maybe disrupting the traditional ways of learning things, but rather getting hands dirty and going out there and actually looking outdoors and seeing how the landscape is changing and getting them engaged to learn from the environment, like physically in person rather than in a classroom sitting and just watching a video, right? So I don't know, I think getting proactive about it and getting kids outside, of course, when the air quality is safe, I just want to put that as a pointer there, is a good way to go as well.
I had a conversation with somebody about bus trips and field trips and the importance of that, and that is another route with which I can approach my administration. So thank you.
Okay.
And I think, did you have something you wanted to say, Toganon?
Yeah, exactly. I'm just trying to add how we are trying to get in touch with the authorities, because once, for example, when once we went to the city hall and asked if we can find solution to the landfills. So they told us that it's not easy for them. They know that it's not good to see landfills around the cities. And we asked them why not to try to find a solution against this issue. And they said that they know it's not easy to get this the landfill rid out of cities. Yeah. And we told them it's possible to find solution. Why we cannot try to recycle them? They said that we don't have in touch. We don't have any contact with this with recycling companies who can recycle those plastics. So we wait for them so that they can find solution, and they didn't do anything. Now what we did is that we try to get in touch with schools, because why we try to get in touch with schools, because whenever a child or children learn something, they will share with their families. And those families, some parents, they are influenced. They have some influence to the administrative decision. So we train children, then children share what they heard, what they learn at the school. And one day, so we, the city, this mayor called us, oh yeah, we heard that you are running a program in the school talking about plastic. So we want you to come so that we can find solution about against landfills in the city. So they called us and we went to the city hall, and so now what we can do, we can help you to get in touch with recycle companies. So they said, yeah, that can be a solution. Oh, we told the city hall, city mayor, that we told you that we can find solution, but you didn't agree with us. Now what we can do, we can help you to get in touch with the recycle companies. And then we started to work on that. A few months ago, they tried to remove city landfills in the cities. You know, it's the kind of solution that we're trying to get. In order to influence the authorities, is for us is to first get in touch with schools and students, because students are a kind of means that can help us to get in touch or to make useful decision for our environment and to fight against climate change. Yeah, thank you.
There's nothing like trying to influence a parent by having their child stare them down and ask for answers. Well done. Thanks.
So I just want to say we are kind of at this time. So I know we have one more question, and I thank the grace of everybody here for being able to stick with it, and you still seem to have some energy token on. So thank you for holding that. But I just, if Vic, if you can ask a really quick question, and then I think it would be just nice if everyone can maybe have a 30-second just wrap up, and it was just a phenomenal having you all here. So Vic, do you have a question that you'd like to ask?
Thanks, Guy. Yeah, I got all excited there when George, when you mentioned facilities. That's my specialty. So thank you for that link. I will contact that group. And, you know, my question is really big. When I see purposeful short-term decision-making that's against, you know, long-term financial decision-making, but also decisions that go against the climate, what should I do? And how do you handle that situation?
Like, do you mean at a school level, or what level do you mean?
Yeah, like in our own lives, local governments, you know, provincial to municipal, within, you know, one entity, one organization. Yeah, we kind of know we need to, you know, if we invest this, we could save money in the long term and do good for the climate. But, you know, why should we invest more money today? That type of thinking. The Vancouver school board, you know, being forced by the ministry to not include life cycle cost into facilities. So then what that does is to, you know, Raluca, you mentioned so many times, air quality. You don't get modern HVAC, you still get fossil fuels running your buildings. And it's gonna cost way more. It's gonna cost like way more. So it's not even a good financial decision. And we're doing damage to our kids' health, and we're doing damage to our environment. Like, we know that, but how do we go and talk to the people?
I mean, you do go and talk to them. That's what you have to do. And I used to sort of work in the business world, and I think one of the failures for the corporate world in addressing climate change has been that they continue to budget and forecast based on the past. So this is what happened for the last 3 years. This is what happened for the last 5 years. So we'll extrapolate that out because this is what we know and this is what we feel comfortable with, and our spreadsheets make sense. The future is going to be different. Like, it's just going to be fundamentally different, whether we meet 1.5 degrees or don't. Like, it's going to be different. Things are going to cost wildly different than they have in the past. We're not going to have government funding available on the same levels that we've had from the past, and we're going to have more costs coming up because we're dealing with more climate change impacts. So you have to share that message. Like, we can't keep making financial decisions based on the way that we have done for the last 20 years, because we're going to be in a very different environment and a very different society. And it's just, I think, you know, that's all I can offer really, is just to make sure that organizations understand that, and they have to start doing forecasting in quite a different way.
Lorna, that's a really, really good answer. It's an exceptional answer, because, you know, a light bulb's going off in my head is just use their own kind of language, and there would be environmental financial specialists, so I can look some of them up. And, you know, there'd be probably would be best practices around this too, that we're just not using, because you're absolutely right. We're just sticking to what we know, which is the past.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, whatever assumptions they're making in their budget, do not apply anymore.
Yeah.
Great. I'm going to sort of just sort of pull it in a little bit, just so that everyone has a and thanks for the question, Vic, and everybody's question, and all the things that are in the chat. Again, there are some activities come out, so there's some stuff happening at the beach with babies. You know, for Laurel put something in there, so in the chat, so you can connect with her. She's doing that monthly. There's Hug the Mountain. There's some things that are coming. So if you want some light family action, day before Mother's Day, you know, go hug a big mountain. We need 8,000 people. There's lots of stuff that you can do that might be fun. And there's also, of course, the policy stuff. So what I'm going to encourage everybody right now is just to take, you know, 30 seconds to a minute to just sort of, if you have some other things to add. So why don't we start with, who would like to go first? Anyone want to jump in there first? Or shall I just point at you, George?
Sure, yeah, I have nothing to add. So thank you so much. Great conversation. And yeah, really enjoy this.
And Genoa?
That's hard. I think that someone I know who's a climate activist that I really respect, she once talked about how the effort she puts in is not contingent on what the outcome may be. She is committed to the effort because she believes in it, and because it allows her to live with integrity towards what she loves. And I think we can really lean on that, because there will be more bad news. And what I worry about the most is that people might feel frozen by a sense of climate doom, and the chance that we do have to save what we can save will be impacted by that.
Great words, thank you. And Toganon, what would you like to add in closing?
Okay, thank you so much, everyone. So it's really a pleasure to be among you and share what you are, what we do. And we hope in the future, because our vision is, as I said, is to build, to put national environmental education curriculum to the national educational system. So we hope those who are here to work with them, so that we can put a good curriculum, so that we can add it, because something that's very important for us. I know that many of you have experiences on environmental education in this, and we hope to work with you so that we can make this dream a reality. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Togan. And Luca, could you add anything that you'd like?
I think my message is just, I think I say this to my nursing colleagues as well, is don't be afraid to disrupt the status quo. You know, it doesn't take having, you know, you don't need an environmental degree to do this. I think if you're, you know, you care about your environment and you care about ensuring that we can have the next generation thriving and ourselves thriving, then just continue doing the work. It's really hard work. Being in this sphere can be often very upsetting and sad. But I think that, you know, for me personally, what's helped is communities like these, where you find your people and you find the people who have a shared sense of purpose in this field and the same shared sense or goals. I would say that kind of empowers you to keep going. So don't stop, keep disrupting it and keep speaking up, bring your chair, even if you're not invited. And I assure you that things will start shifting, just speaking from experience. And it's been a pleasure to join you all this evening.
Thank you. And I know you had spoken, Lauren, but is there anything else you'd like to add and sort of wrap up the sort of Canadian national parent viewpoint?
Well, yeah, I mean, just to echo what the other speakers have said, and, you know, don't be afraid, and every action helps. So, you know, whether it's through the PAC or through a different environmental group, you know, whether you're advocating for George's materials or doing whatever it is, like find your niche, find where your skills match up with your passions, and just, you know, help out, because we truly need everyone, and parents have a great voice, and you have more power than you think you do. People want to listen to what parents think. So yeah, please step up to your voice.